First of all, to the relevance of where I'm sitting today is here in the Mandarin Hotel in Hong Kong, where tragically on the 1st of April 2003, Leslie Cheung leapt from a balcony here to his death and committed suicide. It's hard really to communicate to people outside of Hong Kong the shock of losing such a popular icon, somebody who'd been such a cornerstone of the entertainment scene for so many years, to suddenly be extinguished. And there was like a moonlight vigil outside the hotel, which I came by for. And so, given that, I'm very honored to have a chance today to talk a little bit about the impact Leslie Cheung had on the industry, and also my own impressions as somebody who's long been a devotee of Hong Kong films, about what made him unique, what made him special, and try to share a little bit with people from outside Hong Kong why his loss meant so much to all of us here. I think Leslie Cheung's really extraordinary in the way that he transcended almost every barrier that could be put upon a performer in Hong Kong cinema. I mean, the first thing was he was one of the first generation of singers to become actors. I mean, prior to that, you had a lot of people who were movie actors first and foremost, who didn't really have singing careers. And he was somebody who actually came in and had parallel successful careers as a recording artist and as a movie actor. But what's interesting is, a lot of the times now, I think you get somebody who sings, who kind of does movies, and you get somebody who does movies who's like forced into singing. And in Leslie's case, he had equally valid careers in both arenas. I also think it's really interesting the way that in Hong Kong, you've got people who primarily care for him as a recording artist, and in the West, you've got people who've watched his films, specifically the international ones like Happy Together and Farewell My Concubine, who probably have no idea that he's a singer. So I think that's really interesting that he's somebody who kind of transcended that, because there's always a stigma, even in the West, you know, singers going into movies and movie stars trying to sing. And I think it's interesting with Leslie that he was somebody who was equally successful in both fields. That's really quite extraordinary. The other thing I think should be mentioned is the fact that even though he never really came out and said he was gay, he was somebody who did live that lifestyle, who made that lifestyle choice, and certainly hinted at it in interviews and in conversation more than some of his contemporaries. And so I think it's interesting, here is somebody who is known to be of that persuasion, but can play straight roles, or gay roles, or effeminate roles, or masculine roles equally well. And it was really extraordinary, because I think in the West, if you have a certain image, if you're like a Rupert Everett kind of guy, if you're an actor who's been quite open about your sexuality, it does limit you in some ways into the roles that the public will accept you in. The thing about Leslie is, I think it was his private life was an open secret, but he was such a good actor that audiences accepted him in any kind of role that he cared to play. And I think that both of these, the ability to transcend these boundaries, make him a really extraordinary performer. I think, like a lot of people, the first time I really noticed him was in A Better Tomorrow, because like most of the fans of Hong Kong cinema, my first introduction was the Kung Fu movies. And he wasn't a Kung Fu actor per se, so you wouldn't see him in any of those. But then the next wave after Kung Fu was the John Woo gangster movies, and the first one of those that really caught my eye was A Better Tomorrow. And it had these three leading players, Chow Yun-fat, Dick Long, and Leslie Cheung. So I became aware of him as like the third player in that lineup. And he was very good in that movie. A Chinese Ghost Story was another film that established him in my eyes, because that was a film directed by Ching Su-dong and Choi Hart producing it. So again, it was a film that had enough elements of a mainstream action, Hong Kong action cinema, that somebody like myself would watch it. And then you see in the center of it, even though he's not the action character, the guy who's like the everyman figure, the guy in whose eyes all the weird, wonderful goings-on is reflected, is Leslie Cheung. And I thought he was really extraordinary in that role. I mean, screen acting is interesting because people always talk about the big dramatic, heavy, dramatic roles as the ones that impress you. But I think actually to do comedy, to do light romantic drama, is just as difficult as it is to do a big, character piece. So I really respect the full range that Leslie Cheung was capable of, from something really dark and moody, like Days of Being Wild, through to something light and frivolous, like All's Well That Ends Well, and everything in between. He really was like an actor for all seasons. Sometimes with actors, you get a sense of somebody having a good time, somebody taking you for a fun ride. And I don't mean somebody like winking to the camera and saying, hey, we're all having fun here, like a Cannibal Run kind of experience, but just a film that is fun to make. I think that if you look at Once a Thief, that wonderful lineup of Chow Yun-fat, Cherry Jung, and Leslie Cheung, the three of them, they're such wonderfully luminous performers anyway. Putting them in that background, that's enough. They don't need to wink at the audience. We know that they're having a good time. And the film is often ridiculous, but I think it's ridiculous in a good way, in a knowing way, and it's like, after all of the kind of the Sturm and Drang of doing Bullet in the Head, which is a dark piece, John was like, okay, now I'm going to have fun. I'm going to do a Chinese New Year movie, and I'm going to kind of reference all my favorite European movies, like, you know, Cary Grant, To Catch a Thief. Set it in the French Riviera, so that I have that, and I'm going to get all the like fun bits from Jules et Jim and The Adventurers and all these things. I'm going to have a killing from The Godfather, and I'm going to have this. I'm going to throw it out there, and I'm going to have Chow Yun-fat, but I'm not going to have Chow Yun-fat doing Mark Gore and being this serious gangster. I'm going to have Chow Yun-fat like he is in his romantic movies, his romantic comedy films, but it'll be in an action piece. And I'm going to get Leslie Cheung, and Leslie Cheung is not going to play his normal sweet lover boy or tortured soul. He's going to play or kind of the innocent that he is in like Chinese Ghost Story. He's going to be a kick-ass thief. He's going to do gymnastics, and we're going to see Leslie Cheung do gunplay and kung fu. And so it's easy, I think, when somebody passes away, to kind of look at films, look at something like Rouge, look at something like Ashes of Time, which are like these meditations on life and death, and to put it in that context. I think it's also interesting when somebody like Leslie passes away to look at Once a Thief and enjoy and appreciate the vibrance and the vitality of them on their best day, having the best time of their life, you know, in the summer sunshine. That is the best kind of remembrance, rather than to sit there and look at all these dark films and to cry and feel depressed. So when I look at Once a Thief now, I think it's really good because it like enables us to catch, not just, instead of talking about how did Leslie Cheung die, with Once a Thief, you kind of see how he lived, and I think that's, you know, even more important. I think there are a couple of moments in Once a Thief that stick in my mind that I really like. There's the final robbery, the one where Chow Yun-fat's already in the wheelchair and he's kind of doing the Mission Impossible, like he's directing Leslie Cheung as to, you know, to go in and rob and steal the painting. There's scenes where Leslie Cheung in a suit is walking around like kind of casing the joint. They're wonderfully lit, and I remember looking at the movie as, I mean, he's a very handsome man. He looked great in the whole film, but those particular shots, if you go back and look at them, I think he was really, he looked gorgeous. I remember seeing those shots, even though it's not a big dramatic scene, that looking at Leslie Cheung goes, that's what a movie star looks like. And also, I love the scene when they're in the red car driving along the Riviera, and it's Chow Yun-fat and Cherry Jung and Leslie Cheung. And it's interesting because all three of them, for different reasons, are no longer making films in Hong Kong. So there are these three great stars of that era driving along the Riviera in that beautiful red car, smiling and happy in the sunshine. So to me, that image doesn't just sum up the life of Leslie Cheung or the career of Chow Yun-fat or Cherry Jung. It's the end of an era. You can't fool the camera that much for that long. In a heart of hearts, here's somebody who was a sweet, kind and noble and good person, and the camera sees that. And even when he was playing characters who were quite unsympathetic, some of that came through. And I think a lot of times people ask me, you know, what's so-and-so really like? I say, if you watch the movies, if you see somebody over a certain amount of time and you get that energy from the screen, what you're getting is what they are. And I think absolutely the same is true of Leslie Cheung, that the good energy, the bright, good energy that comes off the screen when you see him, that was who he was, that is who he is. And that's what stays in my mind, is seeing this very vibrant, luminous person whose spirit really came off the screen, whether it was an MTV, whether it was a live show on TV, whether it was a movie, whatever he was doing, there was this energy that came off, positive, warm energy that came from him. And we'll have other performers who are in a similar mold, but you never have another Leslie Cheung.